Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy, the show that talks 100% LA Galaxy soccer. We're glad you could join us. Now it's time to sit back and relax as your hosts navigate through the twisting, turning, but never boring world of the five-time MLS Cup champion LA Galaxy.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com, coming to you from the quarantine houses here on a wonderful Thursday, April 16th. A bunch to get to tonight. A full docket is planned. A whole bunch of things going on with Major League Soccer. They came out with a general statement on their return to play. We're going to talk about that. The LA mayor certainly casting some doubts on some concerts and sports, so we're going to talk about that. This development academy and MLS picking up some slack is certainly a big part of what we're going to talk about. We have a bunch of other fun stuff, including our brackets, getting down to the final two teams that you guys voted for. We're going to talk about that for sure. And then somewhere in between, a good friend of the show, Alexi Lalas, will be joining us as well. So to help me do all of that, he's back in the house. It's Eric, the Portuguese Hammer. Eric, how's it going, buddy?
It's going great. Happy to be back again. Are you holding up in quarantine?
I am so far surviving. Although it is getting harder and harder. Like there are things I have to get out of the house a little more now. It's like one of those things constantly. I'm like, okay, time to go for a walk. Got to get doing something. Have to at least smell the fresh air more than just walking to the mailbox. So it's starting to get a little bit worse, but we're hanging in. How about you?
Yeah, same thing. I've kind of noticed more people are out and about. I think I've seen more people walking the neighborhood now than I had since the entire time I've lived here. So it's just interesting how people are handling, the stay-at-home order. So it's still important to stay home, but I think people we're getting to that point where people are having that need, that compulsion, like you said, to need to get outside, get a little bit of fresh air, a little bit of interaction.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. Oh well, it was a busy week for Major League Soccer, at least in terms of getting some information about something that everybody knew was coming. Eric, everybody expected that the league wasn't going to start playing on May 10th as they had once hoped, and so they came out with a statement basically saying, "Listen, we know it's not May 10th. We know it's probably somewhere down the road. We don't know when that is. We don't know exactly what that means, but it's not going to be May 10th, and so we're going to push it off a little bit further." Which for a league that so far, Eric, has been putting out date by date, and sort of saying we're going to go until this time, and then we're gonna give it up. We're going to go until this time, and then we'll put out another release. This one's a lot more open ended than anything that they put out in front of us before. Let me read just a little bit of it. It says Major League Soccer continues to regularly evaluate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, including how it will affect our plans for the 2020 season. Although we hope to return to play in mid-May, that is extremely unlikely based on the guidance of federal and local public health authorities. Our goal remains to play as many games as possible, and while we currently have enough dates to play the entire season, we recognize at this time that it may become difficult to do so. So that's the meat of the argument there, Eric. But in my mind, this is sort of their first white flag in terms of saying, that 34-game season we kept promising you we could do. It's starting to slip away from us.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that they said it's extremely unlikely. Those are kind of the key words that jump out at me. And so while you said, I think this is without setting an end date, all the previous statements before were, setting this date we're planning to come back. Now it's first it was, end of April. Then it was May. And so now this one, because it doesn't have an end date, it lets you know that, okay, they're going to play it by ear and see where it lands. But to me, it doesn't, while it says extremely unlikely, it's almost like they still have a little bit of stubbornness, not quite conceding that 34 yet. They're still saying it's unlikely, but they're not saying it's impossible or that it's completely out the window. So that's the interesting thing to me. I know technically, it ain't over till the fat lady sings. So you can't, say you're officially back until you have all the official guidance and governors gives the okay and mayors give the okay and the public health specialists all give the okay. So you can't say that until that's official. But at the same time, there's a certain point where you have to just use common sense and say, okay, this is a date where we can't be back by this date. And we can't play a full 34 games. I think we're past that point where they can say that, and they still haven't said that yet.
Yeah, it's getting really close. It was interesting. I was sort of talking to it. You read this, and again, this sort of concession of the 34 game season, and maybe it doesn't happen. But I did start to sort of talk and figure out. Listen, the rumors sort of circulating is that June is going to be sort of an important month for Major League Soccer, and there's a possibility that with a whole bunch of games being played and an extended sort of end of the season, that June could possibly still see close to 34 games, even if they get into that. With the country somewhat getting ready to open back up, May 1st, things seem like they're going to start opening up a little bit further, and we're going to have to see what sort of repercussions we have because of that. But with things starting to sort of open up May 1st, there could be a call for teams to start getting back together with testing. And understand that they're going to start training, and if they start training in May, then possibly June is that date. And listen, I'm not going to tell you that means, Eric, that you and I are going to be back in a stadium anytime soon, because I certainly think that for the large portion of the 2020 season, unless it extends, into possibly 2021, it looks like there's not going to be any fans in the seats. That's more my opinion than talking to anybody, but June still seems to sort of be that important sort of part to play there. The other part of this is that we're sort of teetering on whether or not MLS clubs, Eric, should even play in empty stadiums, and I think the general understanding is that they would like to, but it certainly takes a whole bunch away from what we're used to and how we follow the LA Galaxy.
I know that there's a lot of personal preference about, should we play in empty stadiums or what's lost for that. But at the end of the day, I think it's follow the bottom line, follow the money, and that's really what it's all about. It's about those TV contracts that need to be fulfilled. I mean, the PGA Tour is planning some type of comeback without having any fans on the course. Observing
Right.
social distancing. The NBA is talking about their model where they're going to find some facility, play on multiple courts and in behind closed doors. So I think that whether we like it or not, I think that behind closed doors is going to be the option. And we'll talk about what the mayor of Los Angeles said as well, not looking like we're going to see, fans gathering until 2021. So I think, yeah, we're going to lose something for it. But right now, we're watching marble racing and we're watching, FIFA games. So I think a closed door game, people will be happy to see that. That's at least something, and they'll be able to fulfill those TV rights. And so when you talk about the clubs who are going to be strapped for cash and unable to, have that revenue coming in, at least they'll have that TV contract money coming in. So that's the positive. Yeah, it's not the same, but something is better than nothing.
Two quick points. Number one is I found marble racing from either a Japanese or Korean, two hosts that do an amazing job, and the course is very tricky, and it consists of multiple laps with the marble lift itself. So one, awesome. And two is on the FIFA front. Eric and I have been slacking on reviewing our FIFA games and doing that, and we think we came up with a plan to get you what you need this weekend. So we're going to work on that and somehow still keep the schedule, because right now the Galaxy, we're supposed to have been on a 3-game road trip wrapping up this weekend, and so we will do our best to give you all of that information from the 3 games that will be played, quote unquote, this week. Right, Eric? We think we figured that out.
Yeah, I think we have a plan in place. You learn as you go. We're all figuring this thing out, and I think after our first few games, we had 2 league games and a friendly, and we kind of saw what worked and what didn't work. So I think that's why we hesitated on knocking out 3 games in a row. So I think we have a plan in place that's going to make the people who enjoyed it will still enjoy it, and then maybe those who were critics will see some improvement. The other thing that I will add, speaking of marble races, something I saw on Saturday Night Live was popcorn
Right.
popping. You get 4
Uh,
kernels, or however many people are in your house. You place the kernels individually on the stove. Whoever pops first, that's your winner. That's the new sport. It's going to be sweeping the nation the rest of the
yeah,
summer.
I saw it on your Instagram story. Good job. You didn't win, so that's all I
I did
remember.
not win. I did
Uh,
not win, but the kids won and they were happy.
That's good. The LA mayor does cast doubt on concerts and sports, and this is a weird sort of article just in terms of how the information got disseminated to the public, but it's also probably pretty accurate in terms of what we can expect in Los Angeles. Now, this is the the mayor of Los Angeles. So let's be very clear. The mayor of Los Angeles reigns supreme within the city of Los Angeles. And as I believe everybody's been told multiple times, Eric, the LA Galaxy do not play within the city of Los Angeles. So technically, Mayor Garcetti doesn't get to say anything about where the LA Galaxy play. Having said that, anything that the city of Los Angeles does, the county of Los Angeles is probably going to do. And anything, that the city of LA does and the city of Carson and the county and how that all works, it's likely still going to hold a lot of weight. So, while we can dismiss it as sort of a joke, tongue in cheek here, we can also say that it's still probably something that happens within LA County. And for that matter, might even funnel down to Orange County as well. So as you're looking at this, basically Garcetti said, it was going to be difficult for him to see any sort of live sports or large gatherings of people without a vaccine in place. Or at least without much more testing that shows that there's a lot greater herd immunity sort of going on than what we currently believe is going on. So, having said that, he was talking to a whole bunch of upper level management people, and including the fire department. And the fire department guy wrote an email to his fire department people, and that's how the LA Times got their information. So it's sort of a little game of telephone, but Garcetti went on CNN on Wednesday, and he said, and I quote, "It's difficult to imagine us getting together in the thousands anytime soon. I think we should be prepared for that this year. I think we all have never wanted science to work so quickly, but until there's either a vaccine, some sort pharmaceutical intervention, or herd immunity, the science is the science." So really, that's what you're getting there as well. So it could be until 2021, and possibly into the spring of 2021 when we're looking at vaccines, for there to be any sort of large gatherings right now with the LA Galaxy or with any sports within the greater Southern California sphere.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where maybe they took that quote and they ran with it. The one thing that he also added in the same interview is that doesn't mean that they can't watch sporting events. So you may still be able to watch sporting events just without audiences. You just watch it on TV. Same thing with concerts, working with artists to do their concerts on the internet. So people can still have that connection, but it's just not going to be the large crowds. And so, like you said, Eric Garcetti oversees the city of Los Angeles. But if you listen to our governor, Gavin Newsom, his press conferences, he's basically said the same thing, that he doesn't expect mass gatherings to continue this year. He seems to be eyeing 2021 for those mass gatherings as well. So Garcetti isn't off base. He's not saying anything that's too far off from what Governor Newsom is saying as well.
Yeah, which again sort of puts into it's one of those things that whenever you look at it, it puts this all into perspectives. Just in terms of what's really sort of important in this whole thing and how that's going to sort of hit. I mean, Eric, do you have any hope that you're going to be in a stadium anytime within the next 12 months?
I have, well, that's hope, and then do I anticipate it? I hope. I think fall. They say weather is a factor, and that might be the heat is something that maybe isn't favorable for the virus. So maybe towards the end of summer, you look into the fall. I know the NFL looks like they're planning to go on as scheduled. Their league is going to be going. Obviously, I think once we get back to normal, it's not going to be the normal that was once before. You hear that all the time, the new normal. But I think things are going to be different now, regardless, whether that's your working situation, whether that's your school situation. Things are going to be different now when you go back to whatever it is once this initial stay-at-home order clears up. So, am I hopeful that I could be at an event before the end of the year? I think it's possible. Would I want to be at an event before the end of the year? I don't know that I'd be rushing out, to go to a mass gathering. Having small children and having parents who are of the age that might be susceptible to it. I don't know that I'm going to be rushing out to an event, but I'd like for the possibility to be there, but I just don't anticipate that being something that's going to be top of my list once things shake out.
Yeah, it's again, I think we quickly adapted to masks, and I think we quickly did everything that we needed to sort of do. And now it's all about sort of seeing how we go about and we adjust to quote unquote, like you said, the new normal. But before we get too far out of this, we have our special guest apparently on the phone. We're going to at least give it a try. Technology is fun and fickle, and we'll use it to the best of our ability whenever it at least works for us. So he's a former LA Galaxy player, also a former LA Galaxy president, but he's always had time for us here at Corner of the Galaxy. In fact, we consider him a very good friend of the show. He's currently with Fox Sports, and they just started doing a show called Indoor Soccer, which I'm sure we can talk to him about, along with John Strong and Stu Holden. Please welcome back to the show, and I think it's been a while, Mr. Alexi Lalas. Lexi, are you there?
Gentlemen, I am here in voice and image. I hope you can see me, or
We have you.
Maybe for some people it wouldn't be great, but can you hear me and see me? Everything good?
Yeah, we're all
we
good.
got you. We see you. We're 100%.
Well,
What do you know?
I see
It
you
worked.
too, and you guys both look phenomenal. Greetings from my house, like everybody else. We live in interesting times, shall we say? I hope everybody's staying safe and sane out there as we muddle through all of this together. Uncharted territory, I think you'd agree with me. And I was listening a little bit to your conversation earlier, and I wholeheartedly agree in that nobody has any answers. Nobody knows how this is going to ultimately shake out. And from an MLS perspective, it's not happening. Season's not happening, certainly not in the traditional way, in any way, whether it's the actual amount of games or the way that it is viewed from a spectator perspective. So, look, we're going to throw a bunch of stuff out there, and I think everything's on the table. And hopefully, there's some creative people out there that can come up with some interesting and unique and ultimately entertaining ways to kind of do some things differently, because that's what this requires.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how do things? Yeah, I imagine if you were like most of the people who actually work in this industry, Alexi, your travel schedule was probably all full. You were ready to go. You were either had to go places or that you had to be on the air and be somewhere. So what was it like whenever suddenly everything was empty?
Yeah, we're grounded. And I feel like I have to caveat everything that I say when we talk about sports, and obviously when we talk about the sport that we love with soccer, that we understand that this pales in comparison to everything else out there. And this is sports. We all know are a like to have, not a need to have, but they are a big part of our life. And this is a little escape here when we talk about it. Um, Having said that, we've been grounded, literally grounded from not being able to fly anywhere, but with a recognition that we're going to have to do some things differently. You mentioned indoor soccer, so we're doing some shows and we're doing some different things. The digital component, which was already important, just becomes that much more important right now. We do everything from the house with the internet and all of the challenges that come with that. And I was talking earlier, we're doing stuff with esports, which was already there, but now trying to do some different things. Obviously, the flashback and the historic and the nostalgia type of things that we're doing, the re-airs and those types of things. And then trying to think and say, well, what is this going to look like if and when it comes back? You were talking earlier about having games in empty stadiums, and I get that there's a curiosity and an interest in kind of hearing what's going on, but that gets really old and really stark very, very quickly. Part of the experience of sports or concerts or anything is that interaction, and is that community, and is that music and that buzz that comes from something like that. And that's not going to be there.
Yeah, it's again, it's an interesting time. Does this season have an asterisk next to it already? Whenever we look at if there is even an eventual should there even be a championship? I've been sort of arguing that if you're going to be down to a certain number of teams and you're going to be playing in some sort of tournament style and you're playing behind closed doors, I mean, does somebody get to raise an MLS Cup and call that a real MLS Cup, or is it good just for the banter?
Yeah, it won't be an MLS Cup. Everything will have that caveat or that asterisk. It doesn't mean it can't be entertaining. It can't be interesting. But whether it's records or games or trophies that people hold up, it's always going to be but. There'll be a lot of buts. That was 2020, and that was during the pandemic, and there's nothing you can do about that. That's why this conversation about we have to finish the season, and I get the business aspects of it and broadcast contracts and all of that, but I don't want to do anything now that hurts the chances of next season being as traditional as it can be. There's going to be a new normal. We get that. But I don't want asterisks or caveats to appear on next season by something that we do right now. And so to your point, you're going to have to do something completely different, and that is going to separate it for all time in the way that we look at it. But once again, it doesn't necessarily mean it can't be interesting or entertaining in the things that they do. You talk about a World Cup type of thing, or a group type of thing, or a completely shortened sprint of a season where maybe you just
Right.
play against people in your own conference, or whatever it ends up being. And you can have trophies and you can have winners in that type of scenario.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
So
I guess it's go ahead, Eric. I'll let you go.
yeah, so you brought it up, like, World Cup style scenario, maybe a sprint with maybe just one conference playing. If Alexi Lalas is named, czar of MLS, it's in your hands. How are we going to finish this shortened season? What method do you think would be entertaining? Personally, what do you think would work best?
Oh, I think that having a shortened type of sprint where you just play, because you're not getting the 34 games in no matter what you do at this point. I know that, commissioner and the leagues will say, well, we're pushing it to here and we, hope, but they don't know, and they're just hoping. So, I say you play a completely shortened season if it's safe for. And this is why the Bundesliga right now is such a test case and a guinea pig right now, to see
Right.
if it goes well. And I'm praying, fingers crossed, that people are safe and that it goes well. And maybe there's some best practices that come out of it, to actually have those games behind closed doors in front of nobody there. If you're able to do that and the testing is there to keep people safe, and you're able to do those types of games, just a completely limited type of thing where and it's never going to be fair. No matter what we do this year, it is never going to be fair. And so I think
Right.
you have to kind of put that away and say, fine, it's not going to be fair. Some people are going to, have advantages and disadvantages going forward, but you're trying to make the best out of a crappy situation. This sucks. I tell my kids all the time, I can sit there and I can paint it this and that. I can tell them that they're living through a historic time and they're going to have a great story to tell their kids when their kids are complaining about stuff. But ultimately it sucks, and I don't want to completely dismiss that type of feeling that we're all having here. But you make the best of you can of this crappy situation right now, and it's not going to be fair, but it might be something that holds some allure and gives people just a little bit of taste before, from an MLS perspective, before the season is done. I don't know how other leagues around the world turn that corner and finish off the last season and start a whole new season right now. We kind of have this strange opportunity that, since we start our season MLS wise in February,
Right.
we could do whatever it ends up being, this bastardized version of a season in 2020, and then kind of start fresh and anew in 21. We have that potential option, but who even knows if it's going to be ready by then?
Yeah, I was going to say the other side of that is, there's always been, and I know everybody's been teasing it, but and asking the question. If you would have asked me this question earlier, I would have said no way, it's never happening. But could MLS use this and sort of shift the schedule because of the fact they've always played off of the European schedule, or at the off times of the European schedule? Could they possibly shift this and go to a more European type of schedule with, I would imagine, a winter break somewhere in there? Is this the opportunity they're looking for?
Well, I'm certainly not a doctor, but I venture to say that the corona is not changing the weather patterns in in the United States
Right.
or Canada anytime soon. So, I know I'm being a little facetious there, but, well, actually a lot facetious. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, I don't think that this is what's going to change it. If it was going to change, it was going to change a while ago. They didn't need this to push them over any edge, because I don't think that they were at the edge. I just don't see it as as a solution to
Mhm.
the crisis that we are in right now. As a matter of fact, it probably, for owners and for teams, brings up more problems if they were to do that. So I stranger things have happened. I don't know, but I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, it sort of seems like it's a little bit out. Eric, you have some other questions. I know. I wanted to make sure you got some
I
time.
do. I was going to say we're going to think for happier times now. So you mentioned some of the nostalgia going around. So I had a nostalgic question for you, Alexi. So the celebration at Titan Stadium at Cal State Fullerton, in my opinion, that's the greatest LA Galaxy goal celebration of all time. If you could just walk us through what was going through your head. Were you trying to make it to the top of the hill, or was that just a spur of the moment thing?
Yeah, so I didn't start that game, and so I can't remember who I turned to, but I do remember turning to somebody while I was on the bench. I said, "Like, if I get in the game, I am definitely going up that hill." Because while I love spontaneous type of romantic gestures out there, we're in the entertainment business, and this wasn't a choreographed boy band type of celebration thing. That was a get to the mount, and my I bit off more than I could chew, and I realized it very quickly once I got a couple steps up. And what I thought was just going to be kind of low, hedgy grass or long grass ended up being like kudzu type of level vegetation. That after a few steps, I got about halfway up and said, "Look, this is as far as I'm going to go, and we'll let those other guys catch up to me." So yeah, it's amazing. Certainly at the time, we weren't living in the information age that we are right now, and the instant type of information age. And so it's amazing to me how many people recognize that and talk to me about that. It's because for me it was a throwaway type of moment and game. Not that I wasn't excited to score a goal and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't have that thing would have been right on Twitter or right on Instagram immediately, and people would have seen it. But it still resonates to this day. So I appreciate that you even brought it up, and it warms my heart every time I see it, and it gets my heart going too, because I knew that I couldn't. I totally blanked Howard Liebesking, our foot doctor, on a high five if you watch me come round in the corner right there, because I was bound and determined to get up there. And I still to this day, people stop me and say, "Hey, that Cal State Fullerton thing." We had played a lot of games at Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say
I
it
def-
wasn't even that long ago. Whenever you look at it, that there were still. I was at Cal State Fullerton watching the LA Galaxy play. I think a U.S. Open Cup match of some sort. And that was probably 2011, maybe even
Really?
2012. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. It was certainly within my window, which kind of starts 2008, 2009, right in that area. So I certainly remember that as well. Just sort of looking at that, I have to ask just a general, going back to your management days, and looking at what everybody is having to put up with right now in terms of the uncertainty around transfer windows, the uncertainty
Mhm.
around just how to build a club in this environment. I mean, and the millions and hundreds of millions and possibly up to $1 billion+ that are being lost overall. I mean, what does this do for Major League Soccer in a transfer window? What does this do for, a team like the LA Galaxy who are trying to rebuild and put some people in positions?
Yeah, I'm sure Chris Klein is having some interesting nights right now, and that's his problem. He's got to figure that out. And he's a smart guy, and I bet that both he and the Galaxy, the organization, and MLS right now are doing what a lot of people are doing. In that, is there an opportunity? Is there an opportunity for either for the individual teams or for the league as a collective to kind of do some things in this strange moment and in this strange market, to make up some ground that in quote unquote normal times would take a lot longer. And I know there's a school of thought out there that if MLS owners said, "All right, we're going to double down and we're actually going to spend more right now," that they could make that distance up between them and the leagues around the world in a much faster fashion. I'm not sure that happens. The interesting thing, and I'd like to hear you guys. Someone was asking me about, for example, Miami and Nashville coming in. And they got this little
Right.
peek behind the curtain that nobody else has ever gotten. Because usually, as an expansion team, you have the best laid plans. You go in, you get punched on the nose, and you realize, "Uh-oh, that didn't work. Oh, we gotta double down here, or we gotta go in a completely different direction here." But you have to do it in real time as the season goes on, and it's game after game. They got that little look, and I think it'll ultimately be a little bit of an advantage for them relative to other expansion teams, in the same way that the Galaxy, and in particular Chicharito, who we know is the captain and is going to be so important to this team, they got a little taste of what they are, and maybe more importantly what they aren't right now, and they can kind of go back to the drawing board and figure that out. So in a strange way, it may end up working better. I mean, look, there's nothing good about this, but silver lining
Right.
type of thing, real stretch here, but a silver lining type of thing where they said, well, this is what we thought we were going to be, and it's been proven to us, even in the short amount of time that we were out there, that this is what we aren't, and this is what we have to do and concentrate on. That maybe a couple months ago we were either putting to the side or we didn't even know we had to concentrate on it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Eric, you have any more?
Well, to that point, I think he's absolutely right about Chicharito. Maybe that replacing Zlatan, no one was ever going to fill those shoes. But maybe you realize that Chicharito on his own wasn't the only answer there, and maybe there's a little bit more that they need to add. So I totally agree with that point. And so I know we've been talking about serious things and serious discussions. I brought up the Cal State Fullerton goal, and I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up as well. So with your coverage, of the European Championships, the World Cups, obviously we're wearing our USA gear, but I also have a Portuguese heritage as well. So Portuguese Americans are convinced that you hate the Portuguese team. So is that a real thing, or is it just every fan base of every team thinks you hate them? Because I imagine you get a lot of that too.
Yeah, every nationality there thinks that I hate, because as soon as you say something critical, especially in a World Cup where everybody is watching and there's so many more people that come into the tent, and so for a lot of them, it's the first time that they're experiencing what I do. Immediately, it's because you don't like Portuguese, or you don't like Italians, or you don't like this, or whatever it ends up being, and that's the only frame of reference that they have, and so that's what sticks with them forever. And so I'm forever getting that. No, I love Portuguese players. I love the country of Portugal. I just, for the record and all that kind of stuff. I really appreciate the faux denim that you're wearing right there. That is a classic that has only become a classic of late. Yeah. Because let me tell you, when it first came out, there were a lot of people going, "Oh my goodness, what are we doing?" Including the players when it first came out. So it is ripened at like a fine wine, if you will, over the years. But as far as Portuguese or any other nationality for that matter, I'm an equal opportunity offender when it comes out there. I will criticize and offend pretty much anybody else out there if I deem that it's right, and I do believe that it's fair, that this person didn't do well or this team didn't do well. But what ends up happening is they only remember the times that I'm critical. They never remember the times where I'm blessing them and telling them how great they are and what a wonderful player or wonderful game or wonderful result it was.
Yeah, I think you're in a no-win situation. No matter what you say, I would imagine in every single country probably feels the same way about being slighted. But you're just doing your job, so I totally get it, and I appreciate you giving the praise and giving an answer, being a good sport about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to say, Alexi, I also got the question before we started on here from some of our listeners that why does he hate the Galaxy so much? Why is that? So I mean, anytime I was going to say you're probably the second most controversial quote unquote hated guest that we have on, which is hysterical because I've known you forever, and I always tell everybody, I go, have you ever sat and actually talked to the guy? I know not everybody gets that option, but just have a talk with him and do it. The number one, of course, is one of your former co-hosts, Taylor Twellman. So I just wanted to, I don't know if you wanted to be on the top of that list or if you wanted to be number two in that one, or if you're okay sort of ceding that one to Taylor.
Yeah, I think both of us realize that if you're going to have any type of longevity or success in this industry, you got to be okay and comfortable in your skin, and okay with people not agreeing with you, and okay with people. Like the last thing I want is that people don't care at all. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm not here to tell you things that you necessarily agree with. When it comes to the Galaxy, look, this is the team that will always occupy a fond place in my heart for what happened with it was the only team in MLS that I ever had any success with. And it got me an MLS Cup, and there was a real sense of relief when that happened. It was celebration, but for me, it was like, oh, I don't have to worry about that anymore. And that's important to players ultimately, because it's something you can never take away. And then working for the Galaxy and going through the crazy Beckham years and all that kind of stuff, and just because it ends with you getting fired, it doesn't take away anything from how important it was and how much it meant to me. I learned so much. I made plenty of mistakes, absolutely, but I learned so much and had such a great experience, not just with the players, but with the men and women in the front office. And I got to learn how it all functions. So the Galaxy has given me over the years much more than I have ever given it. So, but I have a job to do. And if, if Chicharito's on an island up there and they're not using him correctly, I'm going to have to tell you. If Zlatan says something stupid, and while it might be entertaining, I believe that it's detrimental to whatever it is, I'm gonna have to call that out. So that's part of my job, and we're all humans, and so I bring my baggage and bias and history, and there's nothing I can do about that. That's just because until there's robots actually doing it, as long as there's humans, that's what's going to happen. But it's okay. It's as far as people not liking you or anything like that, whatever. I got a pretty thick skin, and I've been around for a while, and get in line.
Always good. Well, I know you're not traveling, so I feel for your wife and your kids. So hopefully you all survive this and everybody stays healthy and safe, Alexi. But as always, we always appreciate your time and thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for what you're doing. As always, it's always a pleasure. And over the years, talking to you guys and the way that you talk about it, the love and the passion you have for the game, and I truly believe that this too shall pass, and we will have better days ahead of us. Maybe they don't look the same, but ultimately there will be soccer in one form or another going forward. You can't keep soccer down. You can't keep sports down. You can't keep humans down. So I believe in humankind ultimately, and we'll figure this out together. So, all right, be safe, gentlemen.
All right, thanks, Alexi. Certainly appreciate it. All right, Alexi Lalas, there he goes. Eric, that was your first Alexi Lalas interview, whereas I think this might be my. Yeah, I was going to say this might be my 30th or something. So I was going to tell the story with Alexi on there, but I can tell it without him. He knows the story. He was there. Whenever I first got introduced to Alexi Lalas, it was before an LA Galaxy game. We had a mutual friend in common, a friend who doesn't live here in California, but in Texas actually, and was out visiting me. And so he's like, "Hey, come on, I'm going to go have you meet Alexi." And I may have had, before I met Alexi for the first time there, I may have had 7 or 12 beers. Something like that. So somewhere in between those numbers for sure. So I went up to meet him and I was like, well, everybody hates this guy. So I mean, he must not be nice. And so I went up to meet, and ever since, I think I went up there, I asked him if he would come on the podcast, and this is the podcast in its infancy. At the very beginning, he's like, yeah, absolutely, no problems. Here's my number. Just text me, call me, whatever, and we'll get it done. That type of thing. And he did. And over the years on this show, he has been a co-host. He has co-hosted full episodes with me before, whenever we were originally starting it. So he's a good friend of mine, and the whole reason he even came on this show was because he texted me just to check in to see how everybody was doing in the family and stuff like that. And I said, hey, I haven't had you on for a while. Why don't you come on? So that's how it is. So he's a great guy. I'm glad we could at least talk to him for a little bit there, Eric. And you got some Lawless love there. So now you know.
I did. I was going to say the shirt was not worn in vain. So it's nice to get a little bit of love for that. And then to your point, everyone, I think anyone who's going to have a strong media personality is going to attract, some type of, the level of some haters. But I think if you see what Alexi does, I'm kind of guilty of talking out of both sides of my mouth. Well, it could be this, it could be that, but he definitely doesn't do that. And I think you respect that he has his take, he takes it, and he runs with it. And then I totally respect what he does. And it is what it is. He's, love him or hate him, he's an important voice in American soccer, and we're fortunate to have him on. Fortunate to have him a part of the Galaxy family. He mentioned that the Galaxy is always going to have a special place in his heart, and I think that shows through.
Yeah, it does, and again. If you ever get a chance to talk to him about his time as president of the LA Galaxy and the Beckham years and how crazy that was, and and he'll come out and tell you all the mistakes he made and sort of what happened. I mean, it's all interesting stories. But like I said, just great having him on there. All right, let's turn the page a little bit here and move on with a little bit more of the show. And we're gonna skew a little bit here towards U.S. soccer, and I know we talked a little bit about it whenever Alexi was on, and we normally don't talk about U.S. soccer that much, but the reason that we're going to sort of dive into that and sort of peel back a couple layers is that MLS has some input on this, or at least a quote-unquote solution to some of this. So U.S. soccer just recently, in the last couple of days, killed their development academy. This was the DA. If you've ever heard about the development academy, it was put into place some years ago. And by the way, I would like to preface all this by saying I am not an expert on the development academy. That was never sort of my thing. And if you have younger players players who are playing in DA, then you have a much better working understanding of what I do. But I know that the formation of the Development Academy and how it sort of was able to take over some of these things, when you look at it, it sits there and you have to say, hey, it was controversial in its start there, Eric. It was controversial in sort of the way that it went about things, and now it's controversial in its ending. I mean, the whole idea was it was supposed to be the answer to year-round youth development, and the coaching was supposed to be better, and the competition was supposed to be better. And it also, in a lot of cases, had some negative effects, which was certainly around high school age players, that they weren't going to be able to play for their high school. In fact, DA almost basically outlawed that, just in terms of how much they had to play and sort of how they wanted people to focus on the Development Academy. So high school age kids weren't playing for their high school. And Hammer, I know you're a high school athlete. You played on your high school soccer team. Back in the day, you may have actually had something in here where you go and you wouldn't have been able to play in for your high school, which I'm sure has some great memories for you.
Yeah, it's actually funny that you mentioned that. During my illustrious high school career, when I rode the bench over at Cerritos High School, but there were some actual players on my team who played at that time. It was ODP. They played. It was the iteration of the Development Academy, but they were playing high school soccer and also playing with those systems. And then I know when I played club soccer, on alternating seasons, and then we played, we ran against Landon Donovan's team. And so these are the types of things that you come across. So the Development Academy was one of those things where, was supposed to help player development. But I think we've seen how, U.S. Soccer, the federation, has been run in recent years, that maybe, the interests aren't always, for player development. It seems like there are maybe other motives behind the decisions of the federation. And I think this kind of shows that, because it's not suspended. It's, they shut it down permanently. And so that really lets you know that that's something that they're, kind of washing their hands of. And the fact that MLS, and I know we're going to talk about this, kind of stepped in and is going to take that place and do some elite, leagues throughout the fact that they were so quick, you could look at it as a blessing that, okay, now with the DA gone, if you didn't like what the federation was doing, this gives an opportunity for other clubs to kind of have their say. But with MLS stepping in, it's almost like, U.S. Soccer, MLS, is it one and the same? So is this really a better thing? Does it restrict, player maybe the door where they could, play high school soccer again if that's something that's important to them, but it maybe limits their ability to actually latch onto an academy if they do want to play professionally or have some route. That path is now gone because they're not, those Development Academy teams are now gone or are not, looped in with this elite league that, depending on how the MLS executives structure it, it might not be, they might not give an opportunity to these players who are playing on these teams.
Yeah, so basically Major League Soccer basically said they put out a press release and says that leads domestic player development with the launch of new elite competition. Basically, this is going to take all of the MLS academies plus all of the DA teams that were playing and put them into more elite competitions, both regionally and nationally, and invite in international teams as well into sort of these national tournaments. So that way there is a diversity of competition, and the level of competition is extremely high. So the MLS academies are sort of picking up where this DA has dropped the ball in almost all cases. And they're even looking at possibly evaluating and expanding the participation to include clubs beyond the former Development Academy. So you're looking at MLS Academy teams, DA teams, and this sort of possibility of inviting more teams into this as they sort of see fit and as they can raise the level of competition. But that's all well and said, and most of the time I know we speak up about the boys here, and certainly we had Kevin Hartman on, and I wanted to talk about some of the girls academy stuff, and I certainly wanted to talk about NWSL and possibly that coming to Los Angeles and whether or not that would have any impact for the LA Galaxy. But if you look at the last sentence of this, it says, in addition, MLS is evaluating the potential to provide future competition opportunities for girls as well. So right now, as I'm reading this, it's basically saying this is the boys' solution, and we don't have a solution for the girls. And maybe, quite honestly, maybe they, being their Major League Soccer, and they deal on the boys' side of things, maybe they shouldn't have anything to do with opportunities for girls. Maybe that's up to somebody else, but Major League Soccer is in a position to sort of provide that structure. And if they're stepping in for the DA in a lot of ways, why not step in, 100% for all of this as well? I think they're focusing. I think MLS is focusing in the right areas, expanding coaching education, improve approach to player identification. They're doing all the things that you would expect them to do, Eric, but they really are trying to focus this more on academy turning into more of a European style, with teams having academies and academies developing players, and players therefore rising up through their local clubs, and local clubs then feeding into a national team. That all makes sense to me, but at the same time, you have to feel for anybody who was involved in DA and the fact that the plug has been pulled, and we knew it was being pulled probably for the last couple of weeks, but now it's official.
I just, that you mentioned the thought process being, you now want players to go through these MLS club academies. But when you think about it, especially in Southern California, so now there's 2 MLS clubs in Southern California, and think about all the different clubs that there are, youth clubs in Southern California. So now you're taking this giant pool of talent, Southern California, and saying you only have 2 options, and it's the 2 Southern California-based, MLS academies, and that's where I think it's going to be difficult, and that's not even mentioning the opportunities for girls. So as critical as I was, if you want to be critical of this pathway for the men, this really was a viable pathway if in a girls team or girls wanted to play on these academies and develop and go into the U.S. women's national team. This was the viable option, and with that now being completely gone, it's going to be interesting to see the ripple effects. Probably 2 or 3 World Cup cycles move down the line.
It's all interesting turns again. You would hope, and certainly I think Dennis DeClosa, and what they're trying to do with the Boys and Girls Academy. And as we, if you go back and watch our interview with Kevin Hartman, because he talks about how he's basically doing both the Boys and the Girls Academy right now. But the Academy is really set up to be, a very good thing for the LA Galaxy going forward. And the fact that this sort of hiccup with the global pandemic is probably impacting that less than other schools, because they were already sort of looking at the distance learning with players who were going to go play, in tournaments all the time. You couldn't have them just sitting in a classroom. So they were already well prepared. So, you think that the LA Galaxy Academy and its multiple levels that it has all the way through is in a good position. You would think that would hopefully funnel, Eric, more talent into those academies, and with less places to play, maybe that's an overall bonus for the LA Galaxy, but I think it's an overall negative for youth development right now, at least until we can get an expansion of, really who's involved in these sort of things. But as it looks like right now, at least MLS is picking up what U.S. soccer has dropped in terms of hosting the tournaments and having those DA teams, those former DA teams, come into this tournament. So you would hope that there isn't a huge loss of players. So anyway, all interesting stuff. It's just, again, not something we normally cover, and certainly not in my expertise zone. But at the same time, it's something that I think is at least news at this time, and it could have some real sort of benefits for the LA Galaxy, or could it lead to some benefits for the LA Galaxy. So it's important to sort of understand the background of how all of this happens. All right, Eric, I know you've been keeping careful track of everything as we've been going along, but our bracket is now down to the final 2 LA Galaxy teams. You remember we started with 16 LA Galaxy teams. They were all ranked easily, by the way, by points per game to the 16, which meant the 2005 MLS Cup wasn't even included in the 16-team bracket there. It wasn't even part of it. And somebody actually I thought was giving me a crap about that, Eric, on Twitter, and said I can't believe 2005 isn't even in this. And I'm like, well, it was based on points per game, and I went into why we would justify it in the whole deal. And then he goes, no, you don't understand. He goes, I think it's amazing because you have 5 MLS Cup winners, and the 5th, sort of the one that backed into it probably the most in 2005 doesn't even make the 16. How spoiled are we as LA Galaxy fans? Was sort of his point. And I got it. I got 100%. But Eric, we're down to the final 2 teams. The final 4 included all 4 MLS Cups that were in the tournament: 2012, 2011, 2002, and 2014. So give me who the final 2 teams are, and how close some of that voting was.
I was going to say this was the closest round of voting that we've had. They're pretty much landslides because the MLS Cup teams hadn't faced each other. Every team that an MLS Cup winning team went against pretty much ran away with the votes. You saw 90%, 88%, things like that. So this is where the rubber meets the road, and we finally got to see when you put these teams up against each other, who was going to come out on top. So the closest matchup was between our 2011 and 2014 squad. And 2011 won the match with 56% of the votes. So almost a coin toss there. And I know Dan Gargan did not like the seeding of the 2014 team. He commented on Instagram that he thought we were drinking a little too much during quarantine. He didn't like that they were ranked sixth. But again, based on points per game. And I think this may have been the real final. I think if you were deciding between 2011 and 2014, this is going to be the team that probably wins the whole thing. But on the other side of the bracket, not as close, but closer than the matches before. 2012 beat the 2002 team. A little bit of a recency bias there. That 2002 team was very good, but the 2012 team, when you look at that roster, that's a solid team as well. So in the final, we have a number 2 2011 LA Galaxy team versus a number 9 2012 LA Galaxy team. A lot of similarities on the roster, but I think just based on how the voting has gone up to this point, I think 2011 is going to walk away, dubbed the greatest LA Galaxy team ever. But it was interesting to see how all the different voting panned out for the Final Four.
Yeah, it was. I have to tell you, my team that I consider the best LA Galaxy team after giving it a lot of thought, 2014 is out. I was sort of on Dan Gargan, with Dan Gargan there. Hearing people talk about that 2014 LA Galaxy team, I get it. But you're getting teams, within the dynasty. You start in 2009, 2010. I mean, that 2010 team, quite honestly, if they would have won an MLS Cup, probably wins this argument. I know that there are people out there who are saying 2010 was the best, but you guys voted. You decided that the best teams for the LA Galaxy had to win an MLS Cup. That was what you decided. We told you didn't have to be that way. You could have voted 2010 as the best LA Galaxy team. And so, you're down to the final in 2012 and 2011. And I'll tell you right now, I think you were right. The 2011-2014 face-off was probably it, because 2011, MLS Cup Supporter Shield, the second year in a row that the Supporter Shield was won. Remember, they won it in 2010, and they got bounced by Dallas, which we talked about Kevin Hartman. There's a lot of Hartman talk today. So, go back and watch the Hartman. Or you can go back and watch our Sean Franklin interview we've done. Or you can go back and watch the Edson Buttle interview we did on Monday. I mean, we're racking up the interviews right now is what's happening in quarantine. So you can go check all those. But Kevin Hartman was sort of apologizing. He was like, "Yeah, I remember that Dallas game, and that was a bad game for the LA Galaxy. I remember walking out of that game." And it was an interesting time for LA, Supporter Shield winners, but not MLS Cup winners. Then 2011 MLS Cup winners, 2012 MLS Cup winners. If the 2011 team and the 2012 team played each other, it probably would end in like a 1-1 or a 2-2 draw, and it would probably end up going to the penalty kicks. And Robbie Keane would be taking them from both sides. It's kind of funny to think if you could simulate those two teams, Eric, how it would both basically be a lot of the same players playing against each other. That's what you were saying.
Yeah, and keep your eyes on the website to vote in the finals. Something that I do a little write-up on these, even though it does ultimately come down to you clicking and choosing yours. I do a little write-up, and so I did the same thing with 2011 versus 2014. The way I played this out in my head is if you get in a time machine, you take both teams and you put them on the field together, who comes out victorious? And I think when you look at that 2011 team, I dubbed it dominance of the 2011 versus clutch of 2014. I think 2014, you could never count that team out. They were always going to claw back and find a way to be at the right place at the right time, whereas the 2011 team was just going to knock you out and you're going to be done. So it is going to be interesting. I'll do a write-up on these, and I'll highlight what the differences are, because there's probably going to be a lot more similarities than there are differences for the final.
Yeah, I would imagine that there are. So again, head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com, where you can vote in the final. You guys decide, is it 2011 or is it 2012? I'll tell you, 2011, 1 year earlier with Robbie, a year younger with Robbie Keane, but 2012 was, they settled in. I mean, that 2012 team, first of all, people talk about them backing into they didn't back into an MLS Cup. They caught fire in like July and August and just shot through everybody. And you had Robbie Keane, you had David Beckham, you had Landon Donovan, who had now in their second year. So I mean, if you're saying that 2011 was the best MLS team ever, you understand then you're basically saying that Landon Donovan and David Beckham and Robbie Keane got worse in 2012 because after they played for another year together. And that's such a hard thing for I'm going to vote in this. I'm telling you right now, I'm probably going to pick 2012 as the best MLS. I picked 2014 and I got eliminated.
Yeah, the other funny wrinkle in this, 2012 is when they added Marcelo Sarvis, to pair alongside Juninho, and we kind of see that. So he might be the swing vote. If you feel like Sarvis was that missing piece that made them that much better, he could lead 2012 to the victory here. So I'm curious to see. I don't think the voting will be as close as it was in the semifinal, but you never know. So we'll see. Maybe you'll get out there, start campaigning for 2012.
Now that you say it, are you going to tell me that Juninho with Marcelo Sarvis is worse than Juninho without Marcelo Sarvis? Is that what you're trying to tell me, Eric? Oh, wow. Wow. The whole world just flipped on its head whenever you start. Just take a second, Eric. Just take a second. Everybody needs to take a second and really think about this. All right? I'm not saying I'm campaigning, but I'm telling you the 2012 LA Galaxy team is worse than the 2011 LA Galaxy. The league got better in 2012. Oh, all right. Let's see if I have any sway whatsoever.
I'm going to argue against you. A younger Landon Donovan by a year, a younger Robbie Keane, it's a year, but they're technically younger. Maybe they're just a little bit more. We saw how, when the wheels fall off, they fall off hard. So that year might make a difference. But we'll pull up the stats. We'll see what the head-to-head looked like.
By the way, Philip in the chat room, he says, are we going to make a COG bracket for the worst Galaxy team ever? Isn't that already, that was already given an award. We already know which one that is.
I was going to say, we're already in dark times. We don't need to think about darker times. This is meant to uplift, make us happy. Nice distraction.
2017, Wooden Spoon. It lived in my office. I know which team is the worst LA Galaxy team. It's not hard. That one's not hard, but I appreciate that, Philip. Thank you. All right, let's get to our final thing. Eric, I know because you won't shut up about it, and I know because nobody has anything else better to do, that you scored a goal in the FIFA Pro Clubs. I know the drama that led up to this. Listen, this is how I know quarantine is getting to people, all right, is whenever there are fake accounts created for fake teams, then there's a fake account created for the fake account. And things are going crazy, and there's mock press conferences being held. This is how I know quarantine is going too far, and that some of us need to get out and smell the fresh air just a little bit. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Cosmo SC and the goal you scored?
Well, first of all, I'm going to correct you. Multiple goals were scored. I just had the goal of the night that was highlighted. That was there as well. So there's our logo. We even made a logo. That's where this has gone. So if you've been listening last, we're on FIFA Pro Clubs. There's been a lot of Galaxy supporters, LA Galaxy, Twitter. There's my pro. Oh, man, he looks good there. It's kind of taken a life of its own. People wanting to join the club. We've had, 30 plus people involved. And so I made kind of earlier in the week, I made a press conference video kind of as a goof, just because we're in quarantine. We're losing it a little bit. Kind of had a little bit of fun. I ended up not making the first team squad. And so that created an emergency press conference. Then, the next 24 hours after that just got completely wild. We had new clubs being created, people trying to slide into my DMs, sign me to their new fake clubs, multiple fake media accounts. So basically, Cosmo SC drove LA Galaxy Twitter. We had fake jersey mock-ups, all this crazy stuff. We had, my guy Bruce ended up doing a press conference where he ate a spoonful of mayonnaise. So again, why? Why are we doing this? That's what quarantine has done to us. So it's just kind of, been a fun thing, a nice distraction. Scored the goal of the night. Broadcasting us here, a full volley from the top of the 18. So an exciting time. So a big shout out to @VGN Gamer 12. That's Scott. He's been the one who's kind of the brain behind the operation, getting everyone involved, getting everyone playing, organizing these play dates. And then who is Kylo? He's the one streaming it. And then, of course, Bruce, our mayonnaise friend, he's @BWM121. He's streaming the games for both Cosmo SC and Cosmo SC2 because there's two squads. And so it's just been a fun little project that we're working on. I know we've been challenged to create a Corner of the Galaxy team versus the Riot Squadcast team. And so it's just kind of the wonderful world of independent Galaxy content creators has gotten in and creating it. And all it tells me is that people really miss sports. They are going all in on the silliest things, and I'm having fun with it. And I'm glad people are indulging and chiming in and making videos and playing along, because that's what we need right now. We need a fun little distraction. Alexi was saying it, he has to kind of caveat everything. We want everyone to be safe. We want everyone to be healthy. And obviously that's the thing, but we need to distract ourselves and have a little bit of fun as well, because these are unprecedented times, and whatever we can do to put some smiles on people's faces. I know people have been having fun with it. It's a little thing,
right?
Not a big deal. At the end of the big picture, probably not going to be a big deal, but for now, it's something that's a lot of fun to get lost in.
Yeah, it's fun. It's one of those things. It's like whenever people actually have time on their hands of what you do. My thing is I used to create podcasts. I would just be like, whenever I would get too bored, I would be like, oh, I'm gonna do a new podcast because I think we can do this. And I've been on, I don't know, there's been a bunch of them. I mean, Radio Suju was one. Josh and Zach's Audio Key Party was another one, which I think well before its time. Quite honestly, well before its time. Some great games we used to play on the. Yeah, I don't know, they're probably archived somewhere. But yeah, I mean, there were some fun times and some good stuff in there. Now the fact is, I do 2 podcasts a week because of this. And I'm glad we brought this back up. The similarity is strike. I don't understand, Eric. You're a huge Joao Pedro fan, so where is the Joao Pedro throw?
Okay, so because, and again, if you're not watching the video podcast, this is where
it makes
where
no
we
sense. Yeah, I know.
Because we're driving you crazy. So my player originally had a João Pedro inspired haircut, but given all the drama that I was creating during the week, I decided to go Hollywood and go with the bleached cornrows braids. So I went with a different look to kind of embrace the heel gimmick, and so that explains where where the new look came from. But with my Digital Pro, again, when you put us side by side, I actually see where this becomes problematic. So
yeah, I was gonna say it just let's never do that again, please. Let's all just let that go. So anyway, I'm glad everybody's having a good time, and we're certainly having a good time with the podcast. Still doing 2 podcasts a week. It was great. We're getting some great guests because people aren't doing anything, quite honestly. I mean, that's why we're able to sort of schedule all these and do all this. But we're glad that you could join us a little bit. Before we get out of here too much, again, I want to say thank you to Alexi Lalas. I want to thank all of our guests who have come on over this time. Again, we have some unbelievable technology sort of backing us right now in order to be able to pull some of this off. And so far, it's been working. So we'll continue to do that as much as we can and bring you guys the content as much as we can as well. All right. Eric, is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, there's one thing, and again, I know you basically wrapped up the show, and here I go messing it all up.
Yes.
But what the fit with Kevin Hart? That was something that the Galaxy released today. So Kevin Hart has a show on YouTube. He has a channel. So if you're into YouTube channels, I recommend checking it out. They had some Galaxy players on there. They did some challenges. If you're into his style of comedy, it's kind of a fun little video to check out.
Yeah, it is a good one. All right, Eric, tell people where they can find you. We'll get on out of here.
You can find me at GIS Hammer on Twitter. You could also follow me on Instagram at Galaxy Profile. That's Galaxy PROFOUL. And you could also join our FIFA Pro Clubs, Cosmo SC. So find at Vegan Gamer, that's at VGN Gamer 12. Reach out to him or myself, and we'll make sure we'll get you on the squad. We'll have as much fun as we can during these quarantine times.
All right, if you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at JGuesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com where we're keeping you updated with all of the COVID-19 tracks around the week. That's just been updated there, so you can check it out. FIFA games coming up, look for all of our voting articles as well. So that's right there, cornerofthegalaxy.com. All right, everybody. We certainly want to appreciate you stopping by. We want to thank Alexi Lalas for coming on the show as well. We hope everything was great. So, if you can, please go give us a follow, go give us a listen. All right, for Eric the Portuguese Hammer, I'm Josh Guesman. You've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo. And on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye.